welcome to the Guardsman Bunk Warhammer 40k podcast. My name is Mickey. Thank you so much for watching. This is the third episode in our series of covering literally every single faction in the Warhammer franchise. No matter how small, no matter how insignificant, my co-host is still not here, and that is pissing me off to no end. Today we are talking about the boys in green and silver, the skeleton robots, spooky scary skeletons in the Warhammer 40k universe. We are talking about the Necrons. So sit back, ladies and gentlemen. I have a 9-page script, and you are all going to sit through this because I had to sit through this, and now it's your problem. So let's start talking about the Necrons. Oh, and before you do, please remember, subscribe and follow your computer. The Omnissiah would love that. Alright, so let's get into today's episode. So, let's start talking about the background of the Necrons, and then we'll get into their history, and then we'll do a bit more deep dive into their biology and stuff like that. I won't put the timings, so you have to kind of scroll, but you can imagine background's going to be a bit shorter. History is going to take most of it. If you want just the features and the factions, you're going to go to about 75% the way through. Alright, let's go. So, the Necrons are a very, very, very historically complicated species because their origin is kind of not really known. Obviously you know that they were a species beforehand, right? But they weren't the robots that we're used to seeing. The Necrons last time were called the Necron tier. They were made of flesh. These were cancer-ridden creatures, right? If you can't tell, I am quite tired. The Necrons here were originally a very cancer-ridden species living on a planet with a dying sun. They came around a period called the War in Heaven, but they technically already existed during that period, right? One of the things that we need to mention about the Necrons here, I think we'll talk about this later, is that they are the Warhammer 40k universe setting. You go into Warhammer 40k universe and you see a big space marine in big power armor beating the shit out of aliens, and you think, oh, that's sick, right? That's absolutely awesome. But I think, in my personal opinion, I think that Necrons are the greatest example of Warhammer 40k. Alright? So, let's get into what the Necrons are. What is the Necrons? Quick answer. They're undead space robots that are Egyptian. Meta answer. In the 90s, Warhammer Fantasy was trying to transfer from Fantasy into 40k, and they were getting some pushback because they didn't know how to transfer. So they essentially made Terminators, and they mixed a faction called Nagash, such as the power of Nagash, such as the white powder of Nagash, such as the magic white powder of Nagash. For those of you who know, you know ball. They were a mix of the forces, the Tomb Kings and Terminator during the 1980s. I am not kidding. I don't have the images of the models. If you pull it up, there are images of Necrons and models, and they're exactly the same, and it's really weird. Alright? Necrons are really, really, really interesting as a faction, but if you really wanted to simplify them for all the basics, it was they're robots. They're really cool spider robots, and it's absolutely sick, right? Their design maybe is not for everybody, but in my opinion, I think it looks absolutely sick as hell, right? So, the Necrons are a purely technological, non-psychic race. We've already talked about psychic. We'll get more into what psychers and psychic powers are in this episode because it is intrinsically related to what the Necrons are, but you can imagine that because they're robots, they don't really have a soul, so therefore they don't really have a connection to the warp. Right? Simple answer. Easy answer. Right? They have no mages, but instead have cryptex. I call them technomancers later, but they're called cryptex. And they are like super advanced. Like really, really advanced. Like I am not kidding when I say like this is genuinely one of those races where if they decided to get their shit together, they could probably curb stomp everything except the Imperium. I think. No, I take that back. They will curb stomp everything except the Imperium and orcs. Chaos, we don't get into the argument because chaos can't exist in a mortal realm for too long. So, chaos probably not, right? We usually, like in factions have like a purpose. We'll get into this later, but one thing to note about the Necrons as we go through this is you'll realize that slowly they seem to like don't really have a purpose and kind of just existing. And we'll get into this later, but that's why I think that the Necrons are actually the perfect example of what Warhammer 40k is. Right, so let's get into it. Let's get into the history of the Necron tier, what you've all been waiting for. Okay, for anybody who wants a timestamp, this is now 6 minutes and round 30 seconds. So you're gonna have to handle it, right? I'll put the thing in the comments later, whatever. So let's start with the Necron tier. The Necron tier, they had a superpower, mega ultra body cancer, right? Just super cancer. Real super cancer, like super cancer. Dead, bro. Dead before you reach 30. Alright? You keel over and die, and your face is so big, it's like your head was the size of a pomegranate seed, right? Like just by scale. Your head was a pomegranate seed. By the time you're dead, your head's the whole pomegranate, your body is nothing, and your whole body is just made of tumors. Like your bones are just tumors. They were so cancer-ridden, none of them could eat by the time they got into the later stage of the super cancer. This was because they were near a dying sun, and that planet that they were born on was super irradiated. Shock of all shocks, they don't like cancer. Hands on head, oh my god, you don't like cancer. That is shocking. Similarly, we don't like cancer. They had to do something about it. They needed to find an answer. And so, they became starfaring. This is like one of the early models of like their spaceships, but this is really cool. Oh, we'll get into that later. They're super cancer. And so at some point, the dead of their species completely outnumbered the number of living that they had. Like people were just dying in droves for no reason. They would be walking on street. Suddenly, head explode from all the cancer. I don't think that's how it works. Essentially, people were just dying on the spot for no reason. Right? There was twice dead King Ruin. There was a slave whose half of his face was such a hardened mass that like it was completely unrecognizable. Like one side was like a normal guy, then the other side was the elephant man, and there was nothing there, and he couldn't move I think it was the left side of his face, and it was like so disgusting that Oltex had to look away. Oltex is one of the characters. Oh, by the way, for those of you, bookmark this if you want to bookmark this. 3 books that you should read: Twice Dead King Ruin, Twice Dead King Reign, Infinite, and the Divine. Like people always vouch for Infinite and Divine, but Twice Dead King Ruin, Twice Dead King Reign are very, very, very interesting because they give a very accurate depiction of what the Warhammer 40k universe is like. Right? So they become spacefaring, and they go flying into space. Right? But their spacefaring is like kind of stupid. Like they don't have faster than light technology. Their whole thing was, I just need to get off this planet. So their idea was, I need to get off this planet. So how are we gonna do this? I got it. And so they just threw people into stasis and just shut ships like randomly, like random bullshit go level, like just to throw everything and the kitchen sink and the dishwasher and the fridge, and you get it, everything off the planet fast as you can, right? And obviously this model worked because you throw enough shit in random directions and inevitably you'll land on a planet, right? And they landed on a lot of planets, and they colonized a lot of the galaxy. They still had super cancer, right? And so they expanded out of their system and they encountered the old ones. What are the old ones? The old ones were like a really ancient race and a progenitor for a lot of life in the universe. We talked about this in the Orc episode. The old ones are just really big psychic space frogs, right? They're really morbidly obese frogs, right? If you want to think about it, Warhammer fantasy terms, I think it's the Slan, yeah. They're like the Slan. The old ones are just frogs. Just massive frogs, bro. And they were these old ones. We're not gonna call them old ones. We're gonna call them big, gigantic fucking space frogs, right? The big space frogs, right? The big space frogs were really big on developing and improving species across the galaxy. So they would boost certain planets, like, I don't know, flora and fauna development rate, and the plants would grow faster, I guess. Yeah. To be concise and to the point, it was really cool when they expanded really fast. But one of the things that old ones believed was that life must go in a certain way. Otherwise, there is like really no point, right? Life won't, like, you can't just boost their development. And so they started developing species, they changed species, they moved around. And so the Necrons met these guys. And mind you, the old ones are really powerful. Again, gigantic, big, psychic, big space wizard frogs. Okay, this is the time where we should be talking about psychic. So in the Orc episode, I explained how the warp is like a beach at low tide and there's water on the sand. When you step through the water, you pass through the water and you step into the sand. And as you step out of it, it leaves an impression in the sand. I should be more specific. The warp is an impression of every single being's souls. Collective. It's not understandable in the sense that like, it's just like magic or something like that. Like you can see it. No, it's emotions, it's feelings. So different beings in the warp exemplify these feelings, and the old ones are intrinsically connected to the warp, right? That also means they have powers beyond understanding, which is very good for a species that has so many tumors their heads explode. So the big space wizard frogs meet the Necrons and they're like, oh, they developed. So cool. You know what would be funny though? And they like took the Necrons by the cuff and like threw them back at the radioactive planet saying this is for your own good, and like destroyed their civilization. Alright, okay. This was after the Necrons asked them, can you help us? And the old ones were like, no, but you know what would be funny though? And then proceed to beat the shit out of them and send them all the way back. Right? And mind you, this was absolutely nothing for the old ones. The old ones just did it for the lols. Right? The old ones just did it for the lols. If you can't tell, I really don't like the old ones. I think that their concept was, I think that their concept was good. I don't like, I don't like them as a character. Right? The old ones were really dumb. They're like that, I explained. They're like that really annoying person who is super nice but so naive and incredibly fucking dense. Just so dense. Like, you can explain something to them and they will get it. The Necron tier did not manage to escape their space cancer, most likely because their species' genetic abnormalities and disposition to specific types of cancer due to their long time on their irradiated world probably made it almost impossible to stop, because it's like a genetic, it's their DNA at birth was already damaged, right? So it probably had a disposition to cancer. The Necron tier begged the old ones to save them, but the old ones denied them again and again. And the Necrons got really mad and decided, you know what? Screw it. One up, old man. And then the old ones get their shit. The old ones rock their shit so hard. And Necrons get body checked back to their home planet. Obviously, the Necrons are super mad, but they can't do anything about it because actual God decided to say lol and Lamau go die of space cancer. Right? And this is the point in time where we have to talk about this interesting figure here. That is what we call a Catan. So the Catans are the gods of the physical universe who rely on energy and stars to subsidize themselves. So this is how I rationalize it, because people have different rationalizations. This is how I rationalize it. Catan are living energy with no connection to the warp. So essentially, they have zero soul, and they have no connection to the warp or immaterium. So I would imagine that it would kind of be like they are the epitome of the ball lightning. They're ball lightning, okay? They're ball lightning. And it means that they kind of need to subsidize things that they can actually have. Like, they need to maintain their physical bodies because they understand that there is no other place that they will go. So they require immense amounts of energy to even, like, maintain their state in the physical realm. Warhammer, you kind of need your soul and your body to maintain in the physical realm, because if you are purely soul, you have nothing to subside. But unless you're like an animatronic, you can't really exist within this universe totally, right? You feel like something's wrong. You feel like something is wrong. So they need something to maintain their place in reality. Think a magnet on a fridge. Like, you put a piece of paper and then you took the magnet and you attach it to the fridge. Right, and then you pin the piece of paper to the fridge. Super cool. The Catan subsidized from stars at first, but were then given the mortal tether in the form of bodies when they approached the Necrons. By the time the Necrons encountered the Catan, they were quite technologically powerful. Right? The Catan obviously saw the Necrons who had been slighted by the giant big space wizard frogs. And the Catan decided, you know what? Screw it. We ball. And put their fists up and they go, you know what? We can help you, bro. We can help you. And a Catan called the Deceiver suggested that this was a mistranslation, or the Necrons didn't know his name. In canon, please, sir, I need more ham. I need more ham to fist up, okay? The Deceiver convinced the Necrons, specifically their leader, the Silent King, into making a deal. The Catan would ensure not only that the Necrons would have total galactic superpower, but they would also be able to live forever and cure their irradiation cancer super thingy, right? The Catan first show up to the Necron tier with some basic godlike weapons that entranced them. Like, this was beyond them, and gave them the idea that they were gods, super beings. Now, one thing to note is that the Necrons were like super into themselves and super prideful. Please insert Count Dankula foreshadowing clip or some shit. I don't know. Listen, I'm very bad at editing, okay? I'm not gonna do it. You can insert it in your own mind, yeah? And the Catan, all of this to say was that the Necrons were like, damn, I got god weapons now. I am the best thing that anything has ever created ever, and I'm gonna prove it. And so they decided to work with the Catan. The Catan would also promise them immortality, and in return, they would kill everything. And guess what? The species with an ego just as long as their lives, just as big as any single ship that they own, they were probably gonna kill everything, right? They wanted to kill everything. So now we enter the war in heaven. Ooh! The Catan had a first step, right? They needed to make good on their deal, right? God weapons, done. So now they know how to kill the old ones, right? One of their things was that they wanted to learn how to kill the old ones. Now they know. And then one of the issues from this was that the Catan also needed to give them immortality. But how do you make them immortal soldiers when their heads are exploding from the amount of tumors wriggling like worms out of their eye sockets? Alright? So, the Catan created these giant furnaces of biotransfusion. Think something like a metallic carbon copy. Biotransfusion is like creating a metallic carbon copy of your body and consciousness, or something like that. Essentially, scanning your brain in real time, getting that, transferring that onto a suitable medium, and then using elaborate processes to make the robot you. Something like that, right? Like, the science is iffy here, but you can kind of explain it like that. Alright? So the Necrons really rush into trying to get this biotransfusion quickly. And if you read Twice Dead King, like I said, I will be referring to Twice Dead King Reign a lot here. It's so scary, man. Like, you imagine lines upon lines upon lines of trillions of Necrons just pouring into these furnaces, clawing their way, and they're like mountains of bodies of those who didn't make it. And this takes months, man. So people die, but like, it's all these people that are getting shoved into these furnaces. But one thing that the Catan didn't say was what these furnaces are for. Now, see, the Catan, like I said, magnet to the fridge, pin the paper, right? They need something to subsidize. Stars are all well and good, but then they have to eat a lot, and there are only a finite number of stars. Well, technically, probably a finite number of stars. It's a lot, but they needed something more, right? The point is that they needed something more. And so, they were like, hey, why don't we try something different? Why don't we try something new? Why don't we try souls? You know, a direct replacement for the magnet? Cool! And so they took a Necron and they would throw him into the furnace. And the Necron would like die on the spot. Like, his body gone. His soul gone. His body and soul are transferred into a Necron warrior, right? So these things are made of necrodermis, which is a healing, regenerating metal. And the moment that the consciousness is transferred, the soul and body burn up, but the soul gets transferred up, and there are, like in Twice Dead King Reign, it's so good. Twice Dead King Ruin, sorry. I don't know if it's Ruin or Reign. It's so good, the description, where, like, there are ghostly apparitions of super large, like, ethereal beings floating over these furnaces, and it looks like they're eating on something, right? And so, the Catan had betrayed the Necrons because what they were actually after was souls, because they were eating the souls of the Necrons. And so, the Catan got so fat off the power of all the souls of the Necrons ever. That was a lot of power, right? And now you can imagine, like, Star is like maybe a small pin magnet, right? All the souls of the Necrons, piece of paper, fridge. I'm gonna take, like, you know, one of those junkyard electromagnets. I'm gonna aim it at the fridge and I press it, and then the fridge explodes. Right? Like it's that level of powerful. Like you fed these Catan for generations, right? But the Catan were greedy. They wanted more, and so they took all the Necrons and, without telling them, took these metal construct bodies, people who had souls, and they just removed, well, not souls, but people who had identities. They took the identity and just removed them conveniently, and then took the generals and then turned off their capability to say no, and they were now all subservient under the Silent King. Who got, like, honestly, okay, to be fair, the Silent King got like a really Gucci body that made him like taller and more powerful with like a shit ton of god weapons, but they were like all under control of this one guy who was now enslaved to star gods, and he was really pissed about this. He was like, wait, this wasn't part of the deal, you didn't tell me. And they were like, oopsie daisy. Like, it's the really would you shake a poor sinner's hand moment, but it was exactly like that. It was quite sad, right? And the Necrons just, it was all gone. It was really all gone, and everybody was just gone in that instant. The Necron tier died, and coming from that came the Necrons, right? So one thing to note is that the desperate rate, the biotransfusion, people ask why don't the Necrons just realize after the first guy goes in and comes out essentially a zombie, why don't they say no? Well, because essentially they were running to save their species. Like, it was a race against time because the space cancer was getting worse and worse, a la big space wizard procs. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying that the old ones kind of got what they deserve, because we're gonna get into that. So, you must know that, Necron society is highly feudalistic, where the Pharaon sits on top. It's Pharaoh, but specified. Yeah, Games Workshop is, again, please, sir, I need more ham. I need more ham to fist, right? Just ham-fisted. So heavy-handed. Okay. Listen, Games Workshop is not subtle, right? Context. But essentially, back to the point, the Necrons have a very feudalistic society, but the nobles get all the awesome stuff and everybody else kind of gets the scrap. So you think Prada actual luxury bags versus sweatshop bags that your mom gets from Temu, right? And like, it's all fine and dandy when they're still alive, but now you as a commoner, you a accountant, now have no soul, which, if you don't know, is a bad thing. So the Necrons become enslaved to the big space ghosts, and the Catan use them to begin a war with the old ones, who are technically the good guys, but as with the things with most things in Warhammer, fuck no, they're not good guys. Like, there's no way in hell that they're good guys, right? So the war is less of a war. We should specify the war is less of a war, but more of a way to destroy any foothold the old ones have in the physical world. So it kind of becomes just a path to kill absolutely everything with zero restraint. Like, the amount of killing in the warp, the amount of killing on the physical plane, let's call it, was so massive that all this negative energy and these angry souls and this mass exodus of souls entering into the warp, very angry and very annoyed that they just died, fed what are now known as the Chaos Gods, Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slaanesh is not here yet, excessively, right? Just the sheer amount of violence. Like, the warp at this time was not super rough. It was very normal. But the gods, to specify, the gods weren't ever actually a super big thing. They were kind of just space entities. But the Necrons deciding to go on a tear really screwed a lot of that up. So this caused a swelling in the warp of the malicious entities and empowered the Chaos Gods, while simultaneously beating the ever-loving shit out of the old ones and sapping their good hippie power, apparently. Good hippie power from the guys who kicked a cancer-ridden species back to their planetary system. Don't ask me why Games Workshop does the things that it does. They chose to do female custodians instead of empowering Sisters of Silence, which is okay. I'm not against it, but I want more Sisters of Silence, bro. Whatever. And so, like, the hippie energy is all gone. The malicious energy is now back in. And the old ones who, I remind you, were supposed to be feeling bad for, are, like, getting their ass kicked. And so, this actually can be an argument of why the war in heaven and the Necrons themselves are kind of the sole reason why the warp is so bad right now. The other argument is the Eldar, who actually come into this right about now, because the war lasts for millions of years, and during this time the old ones were doing everything and the kitchen sink, probably also all of the kitchen and everything inside of the kitchen at the Necrons to try and slow them down even slightly. So the Catan had total control over the Necrons, who were very hard to kill due to being made of necrodermis, and it was essentially a fight between the old ones and the Catan, and the Catan kind of beat the old ones' asses, but not before the old ones took out two super weapons: the Eldar, who are really good psychers, and the Orcs, who were earlier known as the Crocs. These big guys, super cool. I'm very sad that they disappeared. They might have appeared in War of the Beast, but War of the Beast is where she wore on my beast till I slaughtered. It originated that phrase. And it's not a good series of books. It's really not. Alright, so points aside, the Catan, the Eldar, the old ones, the big space wizard frogs, the Necrons, and the Orcs all have this just massive brawl, and they go from planet to system to galaxy, and they just wipe everything. Like, everything is just gone. And at this point, the Necrons had suffered casualties, but they essentially killed all of the old ones and cleaned the floor with mostly everything, killing most species in the galaxies and fighting the Eldar and Orcs into near submission. Only the Silent King was bound to the Catan, because every other Necron was bound to him. But this was soon going to change. So the Catan began feeding off the power of stars and the souls of everybody that the Necrons killed, and got fat and lazy, like some certain gym teachers, but we're not going to mention that. They also just began randomly destroying things and fighting amongst themselves. These were minor infractions among them, but this soon blossomed into a full-blown Catan civil war. This, however, was a Jenga tower that maintained their power for a very short time. The Silent King proceeded to take out an RPG, aim it directly, said back blast clear, and fired it, and blew up the Jenga tower. Like, all of it was gone. Everything was gone. Everybody was at war now. Again. Immediately after the war in heaven. Which, by the way, if you can't tell, is a super sick name, because it's called the War in Heaven. And the Silent King just decided, you know what? I got this. RPG, we're not having peace, you fucktards, and it just shoots, and like, people start warring all over again. The Silent King takes the physical bodies he made for the Catan and shatters all of them over his knees. He takes control of his Necron armies, reawakens them, restarts them, turns around on his masters and go, ha, screw you, bitch, pulls out a suicide bomb and blows all of them up. Like, okay, he obviously did explode, but he decides to shatter all of the Catan. He leads his endless Necron armies in rebellions against their vicious overlords and kills a lot more stuff that ended in them shattering the forms of the Catan, which, if you can't tell, was kind of the whole plan for the Silent King, because he was like, damn, I screwed up, but you know what? My ego won't let me say that I'm wrong. So you know what I'm gonna do? Cue the nuclear bomb scene from Call of Duty or whatever it was. I don't have it. I'm not allowed to use it. But yeah, he essentially blew up the entire galaxy. And in classic Warhammer fashion, this meant more genocide. It's beautiful. We love genocide here. We love war crimes. We like eliminating entire species from the face of the galaxy for no reason other than you're in the way between me and that guy. Oh, I could easily walk around you, but you know what? Take this AIM 7 Sidewinder missile, fire, and it's just like, you get the point. Necrons killed a shit ton of things. So a lot more species died, and the Eldar and Orcs still kept fighting the Necrons. This depends on who you ask, but this either got the Necrons either really weak or really tired of all this bullshit, and the Silent King realized that it was kind of all for naught, because his people had lost his souls. In his attempt to save his people, it lost all of his souls, right? Which is so sad. But that was the thing. The Necrons were still here, and they were, after literally fighting two species of gods, they were like, damn, I'm kind of eepy. I'm gonna catch you 60 million years. Alright, bye. And so they log off the Discord server, and so everybody kind of they just left, right? The Necron dynasties were still a thing at this time, but everyone was kind of under the thumb of the Necron Lord at the time, who was Sazerac, who believed he failed his people as a leader. This is one important thing to note. The Necrons are the only ones who believe that their job as leaders is to serve their people and no way be self-serving. This is why I actually like the Necrons, because the Necrons are always used as like some sort of villain, but like genuinely they are probably the most human characters, which is funny because the humans don't even act human sometimes. It's very weird. So the Silent King, because he feels like he failed, he's like, the last thing I need to do is to protect my people. So he puts them all into stasis to keep silent and shut down, awakening only when the time is right. All Necrons, who were unthinking machines at that point, shut down and closed their tomb worlds, which is where they slept and stayed. This ensured that they were kind of protected when they slept. At this time, the Silent King exiled himself. He believed that he was failure, not only for breaking his divine promise to serve his people and do the best that he can to protect them, but he was also the one that condemned them all to a living hell. He failed at his duty, right? So at least he felt that way. This was only after he unshackled every single one of his people under his command, ensuring no master could control them any longer. At this point in time, the Eldar and Orcs were still trying to hunt them down, but very few were destroyed, and many tomb worlds still remained. Quite a few of them did get destroyed by natural causes, but nothing was too severe. Like, it's not like, oh, these guys are endangered species like the Eldar. They still existed, they just didn't bother to wake up, right? So the next section I have is quite tastefully titled, Kill Everything, I Hate All the Flesh Eaters. So, the Tyranids, we haven't talked about Tyranids. Tyranids are an extra galactic issue, and they like show up and they go, what's good, you fucktards? I want to eat you. And then they eat you. And they eat your friend. And then they eat your mom. And they eat your dad. They eat your grandma. And they eat your pop. Then they eat the whole house. Then he eats Tito. Then he eats the whole planet. And then he moves on to the next planet and starts doing that all over again. That was essentially the whole plot of the Tyranids. The Tyranids don't really have a plot. They just show up and start eating quite literally everything for no reason other than nom. Right? And so they start eating. And then this gets the attention of the Necrons. Because the Necrons are like, no, I don't want you nibbling at my planets. Because I still want a planet to stand on at the end of this. And so the Silent King, realizing that the Tyranids were coming back, rushed back, hit the sleep alarm, and screamed at everybody to get up. Right? Obviously, this was not everybody, because some woke up earlier than others. Trazen the Infinite was one of those who woke up a bit earlier, and so he kind of got bored. And so he started collecting all sorts of stuff for, he was awake, I think, during the Horus Heresy and stuff like that. He wasn't awake during the Horus Heresy, but he was awake, I think, just at the end, or either quite near to the beginning of Man. He's been around for a while, that's all I'll say. He's quite cool. So some of them do wake up early, some of them reawaken, and then they decide, you know what? I know how to solve the Tyranids. Kill everything, and they they do this. They just kill everything. It's the reason why I say I hate the title is called Kill Everything. They quite literally, the whole plan is just to kill everything, get their souls back, and be like, you know what? I am now in charge. I can do whatever the hell I want. Obviously, they're not all reawakened yet, and they're not all in their right mind right now. But if I was to put any species that had the chance of conquering the entire universe without a problem, it'd be the Necrons. Right? So, this is the point where I should mention something. Their egos are really massive. Like, the only thing holding up the galaxy bigger than their empire is the mass of their egos, right? They do not care about subtlety. Subtlety is for losers. They do not care about humility. Humility is when you say that you've lost. Why would I admit that I lost? I just win. But they are slowly deteriorating. I put here a simile. My grandma's computer. That thing has been here before I was born. And my grandmother, to give you context for those of you who, give context about timeline, I'm going into national service. I just finished JC, I'm going into national service. In Singapore, our recruitment age is 19, right? That thing is like 24 years old and has been going, right? And probably not 24. It's probably closer to 16. But the point is that thing is older than like most things that I own, and that includes my teddy bear that I've had since I was like 5. It works, yes, but also it kind of like breaks, it kind of like has its own fundamental flaws. The Necrons are kind of like this PC. They were really, really, really advanced, and they are still very, very advanced. But you can't keep a PC running for like 16 years and expect it to work the same. No, that thing wants to die. It, like, physically has said that I want to die. Right? Similarly, their bodies also want to die. Because they've been put in stasis, and they've woken up at 60 million years with 900 Google tabs open. That thing wants to die. And so, Necrons gather themselves, stand up, and immediately feel the pain of arthritis in their right knee. They are grumpy old guys who want everyone off their lawn. They do not care who you are. This is old guys club, right? They were the greatest generation. They fought through World War II, Sonny, and they want you to learn your place. Out of everyone, like I said, they honestly have the best chance for winning and taking over, but they are hindered by two things: their deterioration and their insane hubris. Just astronomical hubris, right? They treat everything like it's beneath them. They have god weapons and super technology and undead armies that keep coming back. When I say god weapons, I mean weapons that have canonically killed gods. I don't think any other species could say that specifically. Alright? Interestingly enough, the only thing that has canonically scared them was the Imperium of Man. Right? So now we've kind of covered the Necron history. So let's start going into what they are. So the Necron mindset. I said that they were narcissistic assholes. You don't get like the half of it. They genuinely want to beat the living shit out of everything for fun. They have no goal. Their whole purpose is to prove that they are better than you. And they will prove that they are better than you. They want to beat the living shit out of everything. They're old narcissistic assholes and are now dealing, interestingly, with the paradox of infinite life. Because you can live forever. Great. What do you do for forever? I don't know. I didn't plan that. I didn't think I got this far. I didn't even plan for this stage. And so, now they are similarly suffering from that. They are soulless and immortal, are hence dealing with that fact. They know that when they die, they will go nowhere. Right? But, it's also really difficult to die. And they don't want to die. But at the same time, they have nothing to do when they die. No, sorry, nothing to do before they die. Because they've done everything. I've completed the game. I've done all the mods. And I'm now staring at an open world concept. And I'm like, damn. I wonder how potato my PC can get before this thing starts to like deteriorate. They do not care about the concept of time. And very interestingly enough, they do not care about the concept of like mortality or the pursuits of man. They're like, you know what's fun? A theater. How long can we do this? 4 decades. The whole play lasts 4 decades. No intermission, no breaks, nothing. 4 decades. Recreating the war in heaven. I got it. Let's do that. And so they have Space Broadway, which is very funny. Necron Space Broadway is going to be very funny. Similarly, they are also suffering from reawakening and the issues with time. They are faced with differing sicknesses and are somewhat more terrifying, but because of it, but also it's kind of weird. Right? The Necrons are the faction of antiquity and do hold on to very outdated ideas. One of the things in Warhammer that you notice is that people aren't trying to, people are just trying to get by. They don't even want to, prosper. They're just trying to get by. The Necrons still think that right now, it is the, 42nd it is now 60 million years before the 42nd millennium. They can still do whatever the hell they want, and they don't care what you think. They've been here longer than you. The only reason you didn't know that was because they were asleep in their chair, covered in a blanket. right? Oh, by the way, this image right here is a Catan. It's a Catan shard. And this is really cool because these things are like shards of gods, star gods, and they use them to like power chairs, which I find so funny. So, one of the things of the Necrons is that their mindset is that since they've won once, they could probably do it again. Right? Probably. They're also incredibly stubborn and willing to take literally an eternity to do anything because that is how long they have. They have an eternity. You kill them, they will come right back, beat the shit out of you, and go, listen, I'm willing to sit here all day, literally all year, maybe a whole century until you figure out what you want to do. Go at it, buddy. They were awoken, like I said earlier, they were awoken early by the Silent King in response to needs, and some of them did wake early. Some of them proved resistant to the Silent King, like Imhotep, and some just wanted to do their own thing in peace. Trazen and his habit of stealing quite literally anything, not bolted down to the floor. I mean it. I'm gonna be honest, he might steal me from the end of this episode. They have awoken with, two of the things, actually. We talked about deterioration earlier. There are two major flaws that everybody discusses when it comes to the Necrons. It is the Destroyer Cult and the Flare Virus. The Destroyer Cult is more mental, and it can be boiled down to, like, extreme nihilism and a self-defeatist mentality. The Destroyers have an urge to kill a lot with every single battle, and it grows bigger with every single battle. Inevitably, if they give in, they begin to modify themselves and their bodies begin to warp and twist to gain new weapons and new modes of transport. They grow stronger, they have more guns, as well as more ways of beating the shit out of people and become way more vicious. Insert beloved Gloctopus. If you don't know what the Gloctopus is, there's a Necron model that has like 8 arms, and it's the Gloctopus. It's really cool. It's really cool. Okay, search up Gloctopus Necron model, and you'll understand what I'm saying when I call it the Gloctopus, right? So, the Destroyers get this like urge, right? They begin to get this urge and they grow stronger, then they have more guns and they get more vicious, and inevitably they lower themselves to the point where they have to join the Destroyer Cult, whose main goal is to wipe all life from the universe, including probably all Necrons and themselves. The example that I can give you is kind of like if you watched Invincible, it's like the Viltrumites, but if they were tweaking so hard off space cocaine, right? They're essentially kept around. They're kept around sometimes, but they're not enjoyed very often since they are essentially frothing maniacs, i.e. they're really good weapons. Gloctopus, again, is part of a Destroyer Cult. It's amazing models all around, right? There's Big Axe Guy, there is Gloctopus, there is Gundopus, there is Axipus. There are many octopus-like characters in the Destroyer Cult, which I find very funny. They have like more than one arm. Like, you don't need more than one arm to kill like more than 2 arms to kill something, bro. Like, everybody else has 2 arms and they're killing just fine. But like, go ahead, King. Like, go off. Alright? In recent lore, it said that the Destroyer cults actually came from a specific executioner cult that worshipped the sun god and will host ritualistic sacrifices to appease the gods. Twice that also existed. Twice they came ruin or rain, I can't remember. But that in itself is also really quite cool, right? Also, the mental degradation of the Necrons extends to amnesia. Zandrek, who is a very efficient and capable Necron general, believes he is still quote-unquote alive and continues to fight as if he is quote-unquote alive, either pretending or really believing as if he is really facing down the old separatists from his dynasty. other mental faculties and quirks of Necrons, after 60 million plus years, have become super exaggerated, and so some of them are like genuinely caricatures of themselves. For example, Imhotep the Stormlord is so hell-bent on beating the shit out of everybody that stands in his way, he's blinded by his arrogance and purposely humiliates everybody he fights, making enemies that he should not, and by the dozens every single day, and all those enemies are now ganging up against him. His hubris is amazing. I could probably build a statue out of it. So, let's get into it. The Necrons are robots, obviously, so they are constructs. And so they build these things called canoptic, they build like, Necron constructs and canoptic constructs and stuff like that. And genuinely all you see in them is that they're usually quite large, right? Necrons can get quite massive, with some of them matching and surpassing space between height and width, with taller and stronger warriors being the backbone of their army. They are separated into different ranks with 3 distinct sections: the generals, the soldiers, and the mages. Easier word to put it. The mages are called mancers or cryptex, and they who serve as technomantic sorcerers for the legion specifically. So there are 5 different types of cryptex. There is technomancers, chronomancers, plasmancers, psychomancers, and geomancers. They are specifically in charge of research and understanding, as well as innovation and upkeep. They're usually responsible for a lot of good weapons that the Necrons own, and they have science bordering on magic and capabilities that put a lot of Eldar and humans to shame. Chronomancers can slow and reverse time, as well as change the flow of time, play time back in a loop, and skip periods to appear before or after something has or might or will happen. Plasmancers are in control of plasma, which means they are your classic pyrotechnics, firing off beams of hyper-destructive energy and weapons that burn holes through shipplate and ceramite. It's like a classic fire mage I cast fireball something or type shit, something like that. Like you roll a d20 and you hit nat 20 every single time when you cast fireball, right? Technomancers are the classic engineer or artificer and can engineer, develop, build, or prepare any type of weapon or tool. They act as the master of repair and battlefield construction. Psychomancers similarly specialize in psychological warfare, causing terror and despair among enemy units. The point being, cryptex are super OP. They're super OP. They can beat the shit out of everything. Okay, if you're going off game, no, they're not super OP, because obviously GW has to kind of balance with GW. Yeah, I know that's like a contradiction, but in lore, they're really, really good. And the fact that they're not that many of them, but they're still just as effective and they do not care, is all the better, right? They're in charge of a lot of god weapons, such as the Celestial Orrery. We'll get into that. Actually, you know what? Screw it. We'll get into it now. So the end of the War in Heaven saw the Silent King destroying a lot of the god weapons the Necrons had. And he spared all the very basic and ones that he thinks will never harm anybody, such as the Celestial Orrery. The Celestial Orrery is maintained by the Oroscar dynasty and is a perfect holographic map of the galaxy with detailed zoom-ins into planets, biomes, temperatures, stars, structures, everything. And it allows the user to manipulate them to develop or destroy specific stars, triggering supernovas in real life. The Oroscars see it as like a sacred duty to maintain order in the galaxy, as essentially pruning the branches like a big bonsai tree, but never really destroying anything for self-gain, only to maintain it. The Celestial Orrery being spared is quite crazy, considering the Necrons think it weak. They could blow up. And And mind you might not think that's super cool, because like, oh, I could just blow up a star as well. Like, no, these guys could, like, the Oroscar dynasty could be like, you know what, I'm just gonna blow up Terra for no reason other than the lols. And that is the power that we're working with. And they also have world engines, planet-sized warships for the Necrons that can destroy entire planets with, like, crust-cracking weapons that shatter the mantle, and just, like, everything is gone. They also have this thing called the Tachyon Arrow. Alright, this is going to be a rant. Alright, the Tachyon Arrow is a one-shot weapon that can down literally anything. Like, Necron nobles have this, right? But in-game, Tachyon Arrow is D6 plus 2 damage with minus 5 AP, strength 16, range 72 inch. Range 72, I understand. Minus 5 AP makes sense, I guess, and strength 16, okay. But D6 plus 2, right? In Twice Dead King reign, the Oltix's brother fires the Tachyon Arrow, and it downs a Warlord Titan, which has, I think, 150 health points, right? 150 health, right? D6 plus 2, my ass. Like, okay. I don't get how you down a 100 wound with a D6 plus 2, but whatever. Oh, I'm GW and I can make canonically powerful Tachyon Arrow. Bro, at least let me do something more powerful. Like, 5d6. 5d6 is all I'm asking. 5d6. Sure, I don't want to one shot, I don't know, Fulgrim off the map, but like, 5d6, bro. Literally 30 damage. That is all. You one shot a Titan. 1d6 my ass. If you want to make it canonical, it's 100 d6 damage. You roll and you roll and you roll again until all of them are 6s. That is the only way. Only way. But whatever. Fuck it. I don't play Necrons often, but that shit is gay. That shit is gay. Listen, GW, if you're listening to me, that shit is gay. The Necrons also have... I need to calm myself. The Necrons also have very basic units for tabletop. They have Death Marks. Death Marks are classic sniper units with high stealth and movement capabilities, because essentially they can teleport anywhere and are really good at one-shotting some random ultramarine in the middle of nowhere, right? They, in lore, have very good stealth capabilities and are hunters and snipers for Necron overlords and dynasty officials. They are generally, I think, usually they're either upgraded Necron warriors or specialized Necron warriors who are used to track and kill specific targets and enemies of the dynasty, but they are separated from the Necron general Necron warriors because they're a very specialized unit. They can track and kill specific targets and enemies of the dynasty, usually crossing between planets with ease, and use specific pocket dimensions to hide or something. Necron Pharaons are the generals and the cream of the crop of the Necron militaries, who are usually given very Gucci metal bodies as well as gear, and some of them are the smartest beings this side of the Astronomicon. They are usually in charge of Necron warriors who are command bound to them and take up the objective focus of the Necron overlord. Mind you, I didn't say him. Why? Because there are canonically a lot of female Necrons. And like those Necron females who kept their consciousness because they are no longer bound by physical restraints, they're usually as strong as the guys. Go off, queen. These generals, though, are usually the most susceptible to the slow degradation of time, with many of them carrying over minor personality quirks from their previous life and turn it into their entire personality, losing themselves in either tyrannical urges all the way to just extreme kleptomania, right? Okay. We have gotten to the part in the episode where I can finally talk about the flare virus. The flare virus and the flares are a super fucked up version of I have no mouth and I must scream. So I'm gonna give you an analogy one day. So you're going to bed, sleepy sleep, nighty night. Wake up in the morning. You open your eyes. And something feels a bit wrong. Your skin on your left arm itches. And so you go about your day. Say, if you're a student, you're walking around school, but you keep itching your arm, right? And you itch, and you itch. Days go by and you scratch harder and harder, and this itch is under your skin, not your skin, under your skin. So no matter what you can do, you can't get it off. So you scratch harder and harder and harder, and one day, you scratch so hard the skin comes off, and you look down, and you have metal bones. And you remember you don't have any skin anymore. But, wait, I don't have any skin anymore. Then what have I been scratching? Then you start hyperventilating. Then you remember you have no lungs. What am I breathing with? Then your heart starts beating faster, but you remember you don't have a heart. What am I beating with? Then you get hung. Then your eyes, you blink your eyes, but there's nothing. You open your mouth to scream, but you can't scream. And you lose yourself to this, spinning whirl of depression and this essentially a panic attack. You forget that you're a robot. You are trying to breathe. You can't breathe. You're trying to talk. You can't talk. And then the most basic thing, you try to eat. You can't eat. You have no mouth. You have no mouth, but you have to have something to tie you to your organic body. So you're searching for something, anything at this point. So you go to the nearest organic and smash your face into his chest. He's dead. And you try to eat his body. It doesn't work. You don't have a mouth, but you don't care. You need something, anything. This is an inescapable urge. Inescapable urge. You smash your face again and again until everything in his body is pulverized and your fingers rip and tear and break at his skin, and then you throw the skin over you, try to pretend that it's your skin, and you scratch the skin and the skin comes off, and it's this compulsive urge, this need, and ta-da, you have a flare. Flares are quite crazy. These are essentially the super psychos for the Necron armies and are usually considered cursed. They are rarely called upon and usually are the ghouls of the Necron prisons and tombs, like the trapped souls of, those Egyptian tombs, like the pharaoh's tombs, like there'll be traps and stuff like that. Essentially, it's this. They are generational crash outs and really love super murder. They really love super murder. They are generational crash outs. They have really cool art, but they're also super creepy looking. And, like I said, I'm gonna keep glazing them. Best book for flares is Twice Dead King. They have, the best show up. So now we've covered most of the, by the way, if you're wondering how a flare looks like, because I don't really have any art here, the flares are these super tall, super lanky, and their fingers become super long. They start mutilating. Their face starts getting really bestial, and they stop looking like Necrons altogether. It's quite crazy. So let's talk about clans and dynasties. Let's talk about the Sautek dynasty. This is the Ultramarines of the Necrons. These are the classic green and gunmetal gray. They have super guns or some shit and could beat the ever-loving shit out of most things. They are the largest dynasty and have the most number of active military combatants within the Necron armies. Their leader is Imhotep the Stormlord, and under him is Orchid the Diviner, a Chronomancer, and Nemesis Zandrak, a Necron warlord. They are focused on military expansion and are opposed to the Silent King. It doesn't mean that they won't work with other armies, but Imhotep is a belligerent at best, and often outright hostile at worst. These guys are kind of cool if you guys want real war type of if you want play tabletop, usually people play Sautek, right? The second one is the Caesarchon dynasty. This is the dynasty and royal lineage of the Silent King, Sazarek, and his cabinet. They're usually considered to have supreme authority by many, and with the return of the Silent King in recent lore, raised them from like statutory tributaries to power. They are defined by their mission to unite the Necrons under the banner of the Silent King. The third is the Nihilak dynasty. They are renowned for their extreme wealth and xenophobia. I'm not kidding. They are super racist. They're also really fucking arrogant. So arrogant, it's funny. Like, genuinely, the only thing holding up their dynasty is their defensive capability and the stature of their massive fucking ego, the size of planets. Genuinely, like, these guys think that they can do no wrong, which is very wrong. They can do a lot of wrong, but they don't think that. Are you gonna convince the 60 million year old metal robot that is 10 feet tall and can beat you to a pulp in about 2 seconds? No? Okay then. They're like the super racist plantation managers that have like a surprising amount of wealth. They're very good at defending their territory and are capable in combat. They are renowned for their academic exploits, with the figurehead being Traz in the Infinite. The Nihilak is usually remembered for their gallery, with their figure at the head being Trays in the Infinite. And the Infinite Gallery, owned by Trazen, is like a planet-sized thing that carries almost all the history of all the known universe in stasis as a monument and record for all species and time immemorial. The Mefrit dynasty. They like blowing shit up, like, all the time. Like, they're really good at it. They're stellar annihilators and are seen with suspicion, envy, and fear. They're the quiet kid with the gun in their bag. They just specialize in destroying stars and wield devastating energy weapons, often leaving their enemies in absolute ruins. They subscribe to the philosophy of quite literally flattening everything they touch. Fifth is the Novok dynasty. These are the blood angels of the Necrons, are really slept on and super fucking metal. They have a trait where, like, on battle, if blood is spilt, their engrams will glow red, and then they'll turn into frothing maniacs who will rip and tear to quite literally anything moving. They are a dynasty that revels in close quarter combat and dueling, and they often treat war and conflict as some sort of industrial slaughter, earning them a very fearsome reputation. They have a super cool paint scheme because they're red, and yeah, they replace the silver and green for like red, sometimes black. It's really cool. They also have they're also super macabre and dark, but they're really fucking sick. Alright, 6 is the Nephrak dynasty. Gotta go fast. There's a medical condition apparently, because these are the Speedy dynasty, and they cover the super high mobility squad. These are the speeders and movers. They're expert in speed and translocation. They often employ teleportation technology and also are known as grossly incandescent. Right? It's like the meme of the guy walking up the stairs, blinged out and everything gold. It's these guys. Right? They are trying to turn themselves into pure light because they worship their god, who is their sun, because their pharaoh awoke tweaking out of his mind, and they really love going fast. Their special ability is that they can phase through solid matter, which would be super fucking broken, and they're also like pure gold. Alright, 7th is the Maynarch dynasty. So this is the dynasty that relies heavily on destroyer cults. So they are, by that logic, super into space racism and killing all of the flesh eaters or something or whatever. And out of all the dynasties, they are known for extreme acts of violence, and most of them are largely quite insane or completely silent. These guys are essentially the World Eater faction, with many of them wishing only for slaughter, the kind of stupid headlong charge at the enemy that bullshit brings you. They're heavily associated with the flare virus too, which is great. Honestly, I would pay for a pay-per-view of Khorne and his demons and the World Eaters versus these guys. It would be so funny. It would genuinely be so funny. Alright, the 8th dynasty. Alright, these are now minor dynasties, so we can kind of like skip over talking about them. There's the Charnovok dynasty, which is the only thing about them is that they were really large and ancient dynasty that awoke to find that they were being nibbled on by Tyranids. I don't know if Tyranids can actually hurt the Necrons, but like, no, whatever. There's the Orskar dynasty. They own the Celestial Orrery. Technically, this makes them the most powerful dynasty, but they're way too zen for that shit. There's the Tlok dynasty, which is war crime. They use like a lot of like they use a lot of radiation weapons, and it's quite gay, and there are a few others. But finally, we get into the last segment of the Necrons, and Necrons in 40k. Oh, by the way, this is a Flayer. If you can't tell, he's like super fucked up, but so cool. Oh, this is also a Destroyer. Like, if you can't tell, he doesn't have legs. These are called Scarab constructs. They're so cute. I love them so much. The Necrons are the definition in Warhammer. I feel like they are the Warhammer faction because they are a species out of time. They do not care. They cannot care. But the issue with the Necrons is that they don't have the time to process all of this because they were kind of just shunted into reality and they woke up to somewhere completely different. Right? Think of your old archaic grandfather who has so many outdated views. But, what it's interesting for him is that actually he is stuck in his old ways. But they always work. Right? They always work, and in his mind, he doesn't think that that's wrong. Essentially. The Necrons think that they still own the universe, when inherently they forget that now the universe is a very different thing. The Warhammer 40k universe is a very different thing, and they should keep in mind that. But they don't, and that is the issue. They can't wrap their head around the fact that they now no longer control anything. They are now being controlled by their own urges and desires. They have time forever, and so they waste time doing whatever because their egos tell them that they're the best. But they don't realize that the galaxy is slowly dying around them, right? And they won't unite. Why not? Why should I unite? I have 10,000 years to have this argument with this guy. Once we're done, maybe we'll unite. I don't care. I don't know. And that's the interesting thing about Necrons. It's that they're so wise. They're so powerful. They could take over the galaxy if they wanted to, but they don't. Why? I don't know. They're too bored to do it. They don't think about it enough. And I think that is very strange. It's like a paradox where like every single species in Warhammer 40k is just barely holding on and surviving. The Necrons are thriving, but they're not doing anything with it. They are the rich kids who were given literally everything at birth and now have nothing to strive for. But that makes them all the more interesting. And that is the end of today's Necron episode. Hold on, I have to record an outro. Hello, it is me again, Smiggy. Thank you so much for watching. A few announcements this week. I will be doing something, that being, very important, that I won't be able to record for next few weeks. I will be trying to record on the weekends, but recording won't be possible. Cross also has something to do on the weekends, so I don't know how this is gonna show up, how this is gonna end, but our plan is to come back, so don't worry about it. We will be back. I will also be recording as much as I can, so there will be intermittent episodes, not like you guys aren't used to that already, and we will be trying to do our best. Let's see, what do we have to announce? Oh, right. So we have a few deadlines and stuff like that, because Cross doesn't have enough time. I have a lot of time, so I'm gonna see how that works, but we are going to try and shorten some of our deadlines. 10th episode. once we hit our 10th episode, I'm going to be chained to a chair and I'll have to listen to the entire story of One Piece. Yeah. Which is gonna be fun. Very fun. Very fun. Very strange, but very fun. Next episode's probably gonna be Chaos. Either that or we are going into the Guard. Either way is gonna be fun. Alright? Well, that is all. Thank you so much for watching. GW, I'm never forgiving you for the tachyon arrow. And, yeah. We's gonna war. She wore on my beast till I slaughter. Wait.